Hi, hello. So this is the audio version of my written piece, Subjectivity and the New Aeon, Who We Think We Are is About to Change. If you'd like to find the original and perhaps follow the links, then it's present on my Substack channel, devarage2.substack.com. And there's a link to that in the description below. And the picture, referenced about halfway in, is the image on this video. Today's article is about something that, in my experience, pretty much everyone takes for granted: subjectivity, and specifically our subjective sense of self. Being a Westerner who for the last few years has lived outside the West, and who furthermore is mixed blood, I have frequently noticed how people where I am now, Istanbul, are subtly different in how they construct a sense of personal selfhood and thus interact with the world. And one of the things I've often found rather jarring is the way that Westerners, as representatives of a civilization that has been expanding its global reach through exporting its culture across the globe, either assume that everyone is deep down the same as they are, or otherwise ought to be. Yes, in these days following Joseph Heinrich's The Weirdest People in the World, we're a little bit more cautious about how we express this belief, but nevertheless it endures. But what really is this thing that I'm writing about here? What really is the Western subjective self, and how is it created? When we are born, I submit, we have no sense of self. We have no sense of being a limited entity, of there being an inside and an outside, of there being anything which specifically is me or is not me. But around the ages of 1 to 2, human culture, initially in the form of our parents or other caregivers, comes in and starts to format our mind in a certain manner, not unlike the way those old floppy disks used to in early PCs. We are given a name. We learn that the lump of flesh that we constantly see around is not specifically us, but it is our body. We learn that we are inside of a head, and that what we see around us is a world. Those explaining these things to us, in their various subtle and not so subtle ways, are other people, just like us, but different versions. Bit by bit, we learn that we live in a society, but we are members of a wider group of people. These early teachings that we all receive, no matter where in the world we are born, are the initial commands of the selfhood program that we will from now on run, likely until the day we pass away. They teach us who we are and how we should compose and interact with the world around us in our minds. We will follow this program, not least because as infants we are extremely needy. We need to follow the rules to get our needs met. Now we come to the point where human cultures seem to subtly diverge in how they impress selfhood upon their young. There are perhaps two groups, Western and non-Western. Westerners learn to model this self as being an individual, a limited psychological entity, existing inside a head and experiencing a world outside the head. What gives Westerners their hardened agentic edge, that which Heinrich picked up on in his book above, is their reliance on thinking and rationality to navigate their world. The worlds of emotions, body language and subtle inference are given less importance in the average Western childhood. Something I don't want to do here, in contrast perhaps to some of my phrasing above, is to imply that there is anything wrong with Western subjectivity or the manner in which it is loaded into our frontal lobes during infancy. There is not. In many ways it is an upgrade on how other cultures rear their young, a kind of self 1.1 if you will. Our capacity to utilise rational thought has undoubtedly granted the West a significant adaptive advantage over other cultures for the last half millennium. But make no mistake, this notion of being an individual who lives inside a head, looking out at a world, is not without its issues, especially when the programme is allowed to run long term. Non-Westerners encountering Westerners are frequently bemused at just how guilt-ridden so many of them appear to be, forever hand-wringing over past atrocities they believe they have committed and desperate to somehow make amends. This behaviour leaves non-Westerners at a loss. They simply have no clue what's going on. Live in the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, for a while and you will often encounter Americans hysterically apologising to English-speaking locals in social situations for the terrible behaviour of their leaders, Bush, Trump, whoever. To the locals, if you do something bad, you either harden and continue along, or you soften and cry about it. You don't spend the rest of your days racked with guilt. Why do that? By the way, if you'd like to observe this phenomenon happening in real time, check out this YouTube video of Arab-American academic Musa al-Rabi, author of another excellent piece of Westerner observation called "We Have Never Been Woke," being questioned by an elderly Jewish American lady who, clearly experiencing guilt overload, cries out repeatedly, "What would you have us do?" The immense levels of guilt that this lady, along with millions of other thinking Westerners, constantly suffer from come in, I think, because there is actually no I living inside our head. It's a useful artifact of the thinking behaviours that our culture has had us develop, a centre of narrative gravity, as philosopher Daniel Dennett has described it. And because it doesn't exist, and because it blocks access to deep feelings through its learned need to perform, it easily gets overloaded with emotion and simply can't handle feelings beyond a certain low level. All it can do is to try and think its way through and thus goes round and round. But perhaps it soon won't need to. For it seems that the very sense of self that has given Westerners our adaptive advantage, that has enabled us to develop the tech and modern systems that have undoubtedly transformed the globe, is actually now out of date and arguably being deprecated in the face of an agentic machine intelligence that can increasingly outperform it. Like that old movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers, we Westerners seem to have created something that will replace us, or at least render obsolete our old way of thinking about who we are. So who will we become? Being plunged into an existential crisis by our own creation forces the brave souls among us to deeply introspect on who we really are underneath all the thinking and doing, and to then try to plot a new path out from that place. I think such a search inevitably turns mystical pretty quickly. I myself am busy with this question. And this is where this written piece will get a bit more speculative and perhaps a little out there. I would like to ask, are we actually in the grip of an eon changeover? Since the days of Plato, people have been taken with the notion that every 2,100 years or so, the eon shifts back one in the wheel of the 12 astrological houses, meaning that around this time we will go from Pisces, where we have been since the birth of Christ, back to Aquarius. Here's an image that has long intrigued me. This piece of medieval iconography was one of the most dominant and defining artistic motifs of the European Middle Ages. It features the figure of Christ seated inside a geometric shape, one formed by two intersecting circles and known as a Vesica Pisces. The figure of Christ has provided an idealized image of self for countless generations of Christians over much of the last 2,000 years. We form an image of self as being an individual living inside a head, and we aspire to be like Jesus. He provides a moral template for this kind of subjective self. And at times, such as during the Protestant Reformation, this sense of self and its idealized image have been slightly updated. The connection to the astrological house of Pisces is self-evident here. But what of a vesica? What's that about? A vesica is a protective membrane. You use it to keep something safe from anything which might ingress upon it from the outside. So what might this image be trying to tell us about Christianity, subjectivity, and the Piscean era? What I believe it says is that the Western way of formulating selfhood, itself deeply entangled with Christianity, provides a temporary vessel to keep our body and bodily energy safe from negative influences for the term of the Piscean era. And that thus, after this time, there will be a shift. Indeed, the only bit of Christ which penetrates the vesica is his right hand, which points upright in the gesture associated with intuitive listening toward a smaller icon representing Aquarius in the top left of the picture. So Christianity and the culture that developed around it was not intended to formulate Western subjectivity in perpetuity. Rather, it has provided a means of keeping our body and what it contains safe throughout a time of what would presumably otherwise be peril. During the same period, this manner of creating selfhood has led to the development of the tech that will forge the next era, that of Aquarius. Christ's hand thus points to Aquarius, for it is the intuitive guidance from that time that has informed this era. You may have noticed as I bring this article to a close that I have not explained how I see Aquarian era subjectivity as being. If we will no longer be individual experiencers of a life going on outside of us from inside ahead, then how will we be? Neither have I explained why I think the body and its energy is so important. I have some ideas here, but I will wait for a further piece to better tackle them, when hopefully my own intuitive faculties have provided me with more solid insights. Thank you as ever for listening to my work.